flying a Typhoon south of the Reading Railway. Suddenly there was an enormous bang, and I thought, oh, the engine's blown up. I looked down, and there was no floor. The entire floor of the Typhoon had gone, and all I could see was the wires of the controls between my feet.
Oh, Ancient and Tired Airman was the ordinary name for A.T.A. And in the early days, I'm quite sure that we were looked upon as very odd fish indeed.
As much as they labelled the pilots of the Air Transport Auxillary as being ancient and tired airmen, the RAF relied on their civilian cousins to keep them supplied with planes throughout the war. Between them, the men and women pilots of the A.T.A. flew over 308,000 missions, in which they would ferry any one of over 100 different types of aircraft, from factories to front-line squadrons.
1941 brought an increased tempo in aircraft production.
From small beginnings at Whitchurch Aerodrome near Bristol, the A.T.A. had by now established ferry pools across Britain. But with 1,500 new planes being produced each month, the organisation was stretched to its limit, and the call went out for more ferry pilots. A number were recruited from the RAF on attachment. Some were transferred for operational reasons, and some for other reasons.
I was posted to Brize Norton, where I demolished one of His Majesty's Oxford aircraft one black night, and it broke up like a box of cornflakes. And from there on in, that led to the RAF saying, well, you're getting a bit expensive. And they said, do you mind leaving?
I joined the RAF as soon as the war started almost, although I was almost too young. But right from the word go, I wanted to fly Spitfires like a child. As I had a word with quite a few people in the RAF, higher up boys, and it was obvious that the only way to get to fly a Spitfire was to get into this A.T.A. thing. And so I managed by various means to get out of the RAF and get into A.T.A.
I mean, one of the things he's supposed to have done was to land a Blendham on the Norfolk beach, because he completely lost. He didn't know whether he'd gone or anything. Apparently he tramped inland and he came across some old boy, and Johnny thought he was up in Scotland or something. He came across some old boy, and he said this. He said, "Have you got any idea where I am?" He says, "Yeah." He says, "You're on the Norwich Road."
Johnny Jordan later went on to build a successful brand of breakfast cereals. Whilst his current mode of transport is a little more sedate, he still turns up for work every day and has lost none of his zest for adventure and healthy disregard for the rule book. The independent culture of the A.T.A. provided the perfect home for free spirits like Peter and Johnny. And soon after joining, Johnny found himself climbing into a Spitfire for the first time.
I was absolutely amazed by the ability of a Spitfire to do aerobatics, and I used to spend the whole time doing aerobatics until I felt ill myself.
He rolled a Warwick, which is something I wouldn't do if you paid me all the money in the world. You see, but I mean, he's that sort of person. But I mean, to get something like that upside down, close up to a lank, and get a picture, I mean, it makes your blood run cold. I mean, he could have collided with that lank, no trouble at all.
Despite the arrival of extra pilots from the RAF, there was still a backlog of aircraft. To address this problem, Lord Brabazon, the new Minister for Aircraft Production, campaigned for women to be allowed to fly the same planes as their male colleagues, including the most powerful fighters of the day.
My first one came, I'd gone up to Dumfries with an Oxford or something, and I rang Prestwick, which was what you normally did, and said, have you got anything that I can to get home in? And they said, oh, we've got a Hurricane that wants to come up from here. And I said, but I don't know that I'm cleared to fly them. And he just said, the operations just said, oh, women are cleared to fly them now. And you see, you didn't dare say no. So I had to, you know, go down and get into the blasted thing and take it.
Training civilian pilots to fly every type of service aircraft was a huge undertaking, and one that had never been attempted before. To achieve its objective, the A.T.A. established its own flying conversion school, where pilots could learn to fly the different types of single, twin and four-engine aircraft they might encounter whilst ferrying. It was impossible for pilots to learn to fly every one of the 147 types of aircraft in service, so planes were organised into different classes, and training was given on one or two types in each class. Class 1 were single-engined light aircraft, used for training like the Tiger Moth. Class 2 were single-engined fighter aircraft like Spitfires. Class 3 were twin-engined light aircraft such as Oxfords. Class 4 were also twin-engined aircraft, mostly medium-sized bombers like the Mosquito. Class 5 were four-engined aircraft like the Lancaster, and Class 6 were flying boats like the short Sunderland. Peter George visited the Imperial War Museum's aircraft collection at Duxford to reacquaint himself with some of the aircraft he ferried.
Basically, all aircraft fly with the same sense. You push the stick to go down, you pull it to go up, you turn the wheel or put the stick to the right and to the left, and the rudder the same. So basically they're all made to do the same thing. The only thing is the different characteristics of any particular aircraft.
Peter is particularly familiar with the specific characteristics of Lancaster KB-889, for on the 28th of January 1945, he ferried it from Kidlington to Aston Down. But unlike his fellow RAF pilots, who benefited from months of intensive training, the first time Peter ferried a Lancaster, all he had was a small book of notes to assist him.
If you were flying the aircraft the first time, you'd use the ferry pilot's notes, which were an absolute magic compilation of all you needed to know to fly every aircraft that came before you. And you'll see here on this particular page, it will give you the details of the starting procedures, undercarriage operations, flaps, and with the aid of this little book, which is a work of art, it meant to say that you could climb into an aircraft that you'd never seen before and fly them, hopefully safely, from A to B.
Pilots were also taught a mnemonic, a list of safety checks for whatever type of aircraft they were in.
HTT, MPP, FGG, FUST. H was hydraulics, I think.
Throttle, trim, M, mixture.
Petrol, flaps.
Gills, gauges, unlock controls.
Supercharger, tail wheel lock. And then you can take off.
Hydraulics, throttle tension, trim, gauges. Exactly the same on a jumbo jet. You push to go and pull to slow down. I mean, quite truthfully, I can see that the hangar doors are open. And if I had half a chance, I'd start the blessed thing up and take it off.
But even with the aid of mnemonics and their ferry pilot notes, the pressure of moving so many different types of aircraft meant it was inevitable that pilots would get into the odd bump and scrape.
Yeah, I picked this Spit up from Prestwick. It was my very first Spit, actually. And I shouldn't really have been flying it because the weather conditions weren't suitable. But I thought to myself, well, I'd waited 2 days And I thought to myself, well, I better get cracking. And of course, I got over Kirkbride. I forgot to put the wheels down.
Ambulance and crash wagon stand by. Aircraft crash landing.
I knew something was wrong when I hit the runway because the prop came, all the blades shot off the prop. I wasn't very popular for that, I can tell you.
I think my last job of the day was a typhoon, to bring it back to Langley for overhaul. And it was a lovely day, a lovely afternoon. And I got to Langley, and it had balloons around it, like all the factories did. And I was coming in south to north, and I looked at the windsock and I thought, no, it'd be better the other way. And I was just going around the airfield, and the engine died on me. And I couldn't turn in to the airfield because of the balloons. So I had to go on round, and it didn't, it stopped altogether. So I had to crash land it by the railway, by Langley. I must have been turned sideways because I laid my head on that side and leg and everything. And an ambulance came out and they took me to the hospital. I got out myself, walked up to the desk and said, will you sew up my head?
Lettice walked away from her crash landing, but some people weren't so lucky.
We were flying back in this Mosquito from the north and we were going to Lasham. And we were approaching a very big snowstorm. And so, of course, we couldn't talk to each other. And as we approached this thunderhead, I turned around, because I had a lot of experience by then, and I turned around, went around it, and it took a lot longer. But I knew I'd get icing and probably an engine cut with the two twin engines. So when we eventually got there, when I got to Lasham and I was on the approach, I saw this big black patch right in the middle of the runway. And I thought, God, what's that, And after I landed, it was my friend. She went through the storm, obviously had icing, and they stalled, and it was just burnt, an explosion, all made of wood, and they were killed outright. All I saw was the black remains of that. There was nothing there. It was all burnt out.
As with other services, dealing with the death of colleagues or loved ones became a regular reality for many A.T.A. pilots.
You lost a lot of people in your among your colleagues, and you just went on. I think the worst part was VE Day. Me, anyway, I sort of just felt this awful desolation. And, it's silly that it still makes you feel like that.